Let me slam you with the unvarnished, merciless truth once more. Accumulating genuine wealth isn't some esoteric ceremony concealed behind locked vaults, scribbled in forbidden grimoires, or whispered among blood-oath cabals. The road to serious money is savagely uncomplicated. It doesn't require Einstein-level intellect. It doesn't insist on impeccable timing or flawless moves. It insists on something far scarcer and far more expensive: merciless self-honesty paired with cold, deliberate nerve. The overwhelming majority never taste real wealth, not because the prize sits on an unreachable peak, but because they flinch when they see the blood price tag. They want riches gift-wrapped in convenience, delivered on a silver tray with sympathetic nods and gentle encouragement. Reality doesn't run that department. Reality operates on rigid, pitiless principles. And the governing principle never budges. Money doesn't migrate toward wishful thinkers. It migrates toward whoever is willing to play the actual, dirty, no-rules version of the game, not the sanitized fairy tale edition they were sold in school and self-help aisles. Machiavelli understood this at a cellular level. He cut open the anatomy of power without anesthesia. He studied men and women as they truly behave when the masks slip, not as poets pretend they should behave. His conclusion was brutal and permanent. The world tilts toward those who discard every comforting illusion and grip what actually exists. So let's torch every last fairy tale right now. Throw out the pastel-colored affirmations, the viral motivational quotes, the cozy little narratives designed to keep you chewing your cud peacefully. Work hard and the universe will reward you. Absolute nonsense. Armies of hard workers retire broke and broken. Believe in yourself and doors will open. Pure opium for the unambitious. Self-belief without leverage is just expensive daydreaming. Those lines aren't inspiration, they're behavioral tranquilizers. They exist to keep you docile, predictable, harvestable. Predictable organisms are inexpensive to control. They rise with alarms, execute scripted motions, refresh feeds endlessly, trade life for direct deposit, numb out with screens, collapse, reboot, repeat forever. Predictability buys you just enough calories and shelter to stay alive, not enough autonomy to live. Survival is not sovereignty. Cushion is not command. Do you seriously imagine the architecture of modern society is secretly rooting for you to become independently wealthy? Of course it isn't. The architecture is engineered for compliance. It breeds apathy. It dangles carrot dreams while starving real action. Because the instant you stop consuming the script and start rewriting it, the moment you choose construction over consumption, you become an unpredictable variable. And unpredictable variables are the one thing centralized systems cannot tolerate. Machiavelli would have laughed until he bled at the collective blindness. He saw what cowards refuse to see. Justice is cosmetic. Meritocracy is marketing. Virtue rarely pays dividends. Raw, unapologetic initiative does. Not the timid souls waiting for green lights from authority, but the ones who install their own traffic signals and make everyone else obey them. Here is the first naked blade of truth. The great majority remain financially crippled because they faithfully execute instructions specifically written to keep them financially crippled. They ingested the approved doctrine, labor obediently, hoard tiny percentages, hope Providence smiles. The genuinely affluent do none of those things. They do not hope. They calculate probabilities and force favorable outcomes. They do not hoard currency in low-yield cages. They weaponize it. They do not rent out their hours to the highest bidder. They construct mechanisms that rent other people's hours, attention, and capital for them, indefinitely. Picture the parallel timelines. Two individuals, same city block, same calendar year, roughly same starting advantages. Person A clocks in, collects bi-weekly blood money, saves whatever survives after lifestyle creep, clings to the myth of security. Person B devours asymmetric information, experiments with small bets, masters influence and exchange. 10 years later, Person A owns fatigue, debt disguised as assets, and a retirement number that inflation is quietly murdering. Person B owns cash-flowing entities, appreciating positions, multiplied optionality, actual freedom of movement. What separated them? Not raw labor hours, not passion, not luck. Cognitive framework. The wealthy categorically reject the financial religion invented for wage earners. They author their own sacred texts with only 3 commandments: acquire ownership, exert control, engineer exponential multiplication. The employee sells the only non-renewable resource he possesses, remaining heartbeats, for fiat. The sovereign recognizes that trading finite life for dollars is the single worst bargain available. Ownership, however, is immortal, as long as the system it sits inside endures. Own revenue streams, own intellectual property, own distribution, own attention arbitrage, and the equation flips. You no longer feed the machine feeds you. That is the fulcrum moment most people never reach. Paralysis prevents it. Paralysis of public failure, paralysis of ridicule, paralysis of straying from the herd path. But the herd path terminates in a beige celebration, a commemorative plaque, and monthly checks that shrink in real terms every year. Pensions are eaten alive by the same inflation the herd was told to ignore. Paralysis is not prudence. It is premeditated surrender disguised as wisdom. Entire sectors vanish overnight. Currencies are debased methodically. Stored labor, savings, evaporates without fanfare. That is not a safety net. That is a slow-motion guillotine. The courageous do not pursue safety nets. They pursue sovereignty over variables, sovereignty of schedule, sovereignty of income sources, sovereignty of geographic optionality. And sovereignty is purchased exclusively through calibrated exposure to uncertainty, not blind gambling, but asymmetric bets where downside is contained and upside is uncapped. They perceive what the majority anesthetizes itself against, uncertain. NTI is not the reaper. It is the only gatekeeper that matters. Machiavelli crystallized it perfectly. Fortune is a woman, and if you wish to possess her, you must beat and ill-use her. In less poetic terms, fortune rewards aggression over hesitation, momentum over meditation, impetuosity over excessive caution. Even when the map is laid bare, the majority still freezes. Why? Because they mistake busyness for trajectory. They generate furious motion, endless side projects that never ship, content that never converts, relationships that never compound. Then anoint the motion progress. Wealth has nothing to do with motion. It has everything to do with orientation. Map where value is concentrating. Position yourself directly in the flow. Construct leverage amplifiers. Extract more than you surrender. Fortify the perimeter. Compound without apology. The formula is primitive in its clarity. Execution is anything but primitive. Think of serious money as a colossal, indifferent river carving continents. Most people stand on the banks clutching buckets, praying for overflow droplets. The few who matter divert the river itself. Canals, reservoirs, turbines, pipelines. Same water, same physics. One cohort waits passively. The other cohort redirects physics in its favor. One cohort petitions nature. The other cohort commands nature. And here the blade twists deeper. Machiavelli identified the 2 eternal puppeteers of human action, fear and appetite. The elite do not merely understand these forces, they orchestrate them at industrial scale. They weaponize FOMO until it becomes physical pain. They inflame appetite until it overrides logic. They build cathedrals of desire, not through rational argument, but through primal emotional hijack. They do not sell widgets. They sell transformation, status elevation, revenge on insignificance, belonging to an exclusive tribe. They do not list product specifications. They implant vivid, addictive identities. Authentic wealth is never measured in ledger balances alone. Authentic wealth is dominion over human emotion, monopoly on attention, narrative supremacy. The individual who can make masses crave what he controls will never know poverty. The individual who becomes culturally gravitational will never lack leverage. And gravity can be manufactured, but manufacturing it draws predators. Assent summons opposition. Envy arrives wearing friendly masks. Resentment arrives dressed as concern. People will diagnose you as changed, arrogant, greedy, because your escape from the shared cage exposes the voluntary nature of their imprisonment. Machiavelli prepared princes for exactly this dynamic. Elevation invites conspiracy. Wealth invites the same. You must answer honestly. Can you absorb betrayal, slander, isolation, sabotage, and continue marching? If the answer is yes, the battlefield is yours. The deepest fracture in society is not intelligence distribution or work ethic distribution, it is perceptual distribution. From infancy, you were trained downward, not because your capacity was deficient, but because controllable units are required for systemic stability. Raise hand. Memorize approved answers. Do not interrogate premises. Secure stable employment. Linger inside it for decades. Retire with just enough to avoid street homelessness. That curriculum was never education. It was pacification programming. Most never audited the curriculum. They confused obedience with maturity. You were not taught money mechanics because money mechanics would have made dependency optional. Selling at elite levels, structuring irresistible offers, negotiating from strength, compounding capital intelligently, creating value from zero. These competencies were deliberately omitted. Omitted because widespread mastery would collapse the dependency pyramid that keeps entire economies humming. The wealthy cracked the omission early. They discarded the curriculum written for livestock. They wrote private curricula because they recognized the core axiom: serious wealth is never compensation for personal effort. It is harvested through geometric amplification of effort, not mass compliance, mass circumvention. Envision the compliant archetype: 5:45 a.m. alarm, identical wardrobe rotation, soul-crushing commute, inbox warfare, praying for a retirement parachute that statistically arrives too late and too thin. Liberation never materializes because nothing autonomous was constructed. Now envision the insurgent archetype: identical starting conditions, but relentless pattern interruption. Hypothesis, trial, catastrophic failure, rapid iteration, modest traction, compounding flywheel. Side experiment becomes primary revenue. Revenue funds capital A. Acquisition. Capital acquisition purchases freedom of time and geography. A decade later, one still barters remaining life force. The other trades appreciating empires. One is chronically depleted. The other radiates command presence. Luck was not the differentiator. Audacity was. The audacity to stare at every received truth and ask, who profits if I continue believing this? The overwhelming majority will never pose that question seriously. Comfort is the most addictive substance known to man. Safety feels like love. Conformity feels like community. But comfort is metastatic slow poison masquerading as contentment. It smothers latent fire beneath layers of distraction and low-grade dopamine. Days dissolve. Decades evaporate. Potential calcifies into regret. Machiavelli diagnosed the mechanism centuries ago. Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, and while you treat them well, they are yours. But when you are in adversity, they turn. More pointedly, prosperity breeds forgetfulness of danger, yet danger never forgets prosperity. The environment does not reward sentiment. It rewards applied force. Applied force is purchased with friction, with voluntary discomfort, with strategic ruthlessness. To capture wealth, you must first execute a full uninstall of every received script. Replace saccharine mythology with jagged, bloody axioms. The jaggedest axiom of all: no external entity is coming to deliver your preferred future. Not employer, not government, not family, not society. Only T. He person staring back in the mirror carries final responsibility. Where does execution commence? Not with capital. Capital follows. Commence with weaponized competence. Competence is the new gunpowder. Elite-level persuasion, world-class copy, functional code, visual systems that convert attention into money, negotiation mastery, offer architecture. These are the tools that erect unassailable positions. Diplomas are decorative, resumes are begging letters, scar tissue-earned skill is sovereign currency. Select one domain. Forge obsessive mastery, sharpen daily until mediocrity bleeds out. Mastery generates unshakable certainty. Unshakable certainty becomes financial magnetism. Phase 2. Eradicate employee epistemology. If your default mental model still contains hourly arithmetic, the war is already lost. That framework was purpose-built for containment, not conquest. Employees obsess over marginal rate per hour. Owners obsess over marginal return per deployed asset forever. Execute that perceptual migration immediately. Cease trading life units. Commence building autonomous value generators. Phase 3. Engineer geometric leverage. Solo capacity is biologically capped. Systems, software, media platforms, capital markets, aligned talent. These are force multipliers. A writer no longer needs a publisher. The internet became the publisher. A seller no longer needs a storefront army. Funnels and ads became the army. A builder no longer needs permission. Open protocols became permissionless. Absent leverage, you remain biologically one human. With leverage, you become legion. Reality now draws blood. Embrace savagery or perish in comfort. Ascent is not a victory lap. It is trench warfare against entropy, against self-doubt, against social gravity. Ridicule will arrive in waves. Visible failure will arrive publicly. Intimate relationships will fracture under misunderstanding. Darkness will feel permanent. Loneliness will feel terminal. Advance regardless. That crucible is the only corridor that leads to sovereignty. The majority collapse inside it, not from congenital weakness, but from zero prior conditioning for voluntary suffering. They were bottle-fed fairness illusions. They were mainlined hope porn. They were never inoculated against pain. The remnant who endures, who continues when every instinct screams retreat, rises. Phase 4. Fortify the empire the instant it materializes. Victory is the moment predators scent blood. Smiling parasites appear. Copycat operations launch. Legal ambushes materialize. Machiavelli drilled this into every prince he advised. Prepare defenses during peacetime because war does not announce itself politely. Serious wealth requires identical doctrine, ironclad agreements, jurisdictional diversification, ruthless boundary enforcement, network discernment. Once sovereignty is tasted, its loss becomes unthinkable. Guard it accordingly. Even perfect execution to this point is insufficient. The ultimate proving ground is psych. Hological. Money will arrive. If clarity and ferocity are sustained long enough, arrival is mathematically inevitable. But arrival does not heal character defects, it amplifies them. Impulsive becomes catastrophically impulsive. Insecure becomes paranoid with 9 zeros. Directionless becomes expensively directionless. Preempt that collapse. Train the mind to treat wealth as tool, never as identity. Grasp the final distinction. Wealth is never chrome, carbon fiber or square footage. Those are billboards. Genuine wealth is irrevocable optionality. Over time, over location, over association, over agenda. When no external party can command your hours, you are wealthy, full stop. When no counterparty dictates your yes, no, you are sovereign, full stop. Machiavelli built doctrine for centuries-long continuity. True apex wealth thinking operates identically. Construct artifacts that outlive your pulse. Capital that seeds generations. Structures that compound across bloodlines. Ideas that echo beyond your obituary. That is not luxury. That is immortality by proxy. The tragic majority will never reach that altitude. They will consume this fire, feel the momentary burn, experience the dopamine hit of agreement, then scroll onward. Return to programming. Return to sedation. Return to the collective enclosure. The system will reward them with incremental rations precisely calibrated to prevent rebellion. But a microscopic fraction, a statistically insignificant but existentially ferocious Fra, Sean, will register this moment as termination of indenture. They will shred the inherited scroll. They will volunteer for discomfort. They will study capital flows with the intensity of a battlefield surgeon. They will hone singular weapons until those weapons draw blood from reality itself. They will erect value engines no one ever authorized. And when victory arrives, they will offer zero apology, zero explanation, zero humility performance. They will simply nod in private recognition. They decoded what the herd refused to decode. Wealth acquisition was never mysterious. It was always brutally, almost offensively simple. Absorb asymmetric information, construct autonomous engines, secure ownership positions, defend borders ruthlessly, engineer compounding loops, repeat without sentiment, most crucially internalize. No rescue party is inbound, no divine intervention, no flawless master plan handed down from on high. Only this exact second, this exact decision, this exact interrogation. Do you finally possess sufficient contempt for comfort to endure the genuinely brutal segment of the path? If your answer is affirmative, you will rise. Not overnight, not without scars, not without casualties, but inevitably, not as another obedient node in someone else's network, as the architect of your own network, not as petitioner at the gates of opportunity, as owner of the gates themselves, not as passive observer of momentum, as deliberate creator of momentum. You will speak less. You will observe more. You will strike with surgical finality. You will engage in the authentic contest, and you will prevail. Not because the contest was designed to be fair, not because effort alone guarantees anything, but because you found the spine to walk through sustained fire while the majority chose permanent shade. The arena has never suffered from a shortage of dreamers. It suffers from a catastrophic shortage of executors. The root has always been visible, camouflaged only by its refusal to wear makeup, waiting for the rare organism ferocious enough to seize it without permission. Illusions incinerated. Reality stands naked and unapologetic. The inherited narrative just expired. Your uncontested chapter commences. Right now,